Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see everybody here. It's been such quite an amazing Friday and Saturday, I think, don't you? So those of us who tried to catch a bus and couldn't get one, so welcome. And it's a pleasure to have this event in association with the university. And I'm just going to say welcome, and I'll leave it up to just lost my mind for a minute there. McBryde, who is the director of the Arts Festival Dunedin, and I know him quite well. I don't know why they just disappeared. Mine, and it's now recorded forever. I'll leave it up to Nicholas to continue on, and I'll just have a little news item at the end when we wrap up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Was it a senior? It's a bit young for a senior moment. Hello, my name is Nicholas McBryde, Director of Arts Festival Dunedin. It's lovely to be here this afternoon to meet the fellows. This is a forum for us to hear about the fellows' journey, their life, and their these creative artists, and how they do what they do. This is not a show and tell. There's no opportunity for the fellows to present any of their work. There's other forums throughout their residencies where that can happen. This is purely about how they work. So the university fellowships have been in existence for over 50 years. In fact, I think the Burns is about 56 years old, and it's a huge testament to the University of Otago that these fellowships are running here in the city since 1959. Charles Brash wrote in Landfall in that year, 1959, the following: part of the university's proper business is to act as a nurse to the arts, or more exactly to the imagination as it expresses itself in the arts and sciences. Imagination can flourish anywhere, but it should flourish as a matter of course in the university, for it is only through imaginative thinking that society grows materially and intellectually. So I think that's a rather nice inspiration as to the establishment and longevity of the fellowships here at Otago University. So I'd like to start this afternoon by, I'll start by introducing the fellows. Don't you think that would be sensible? From your right, we have Campbell Patterson, who is the Francis Hodgkins. And then we have Caroline Sutton Clark, who is the Caroline Plummer Fellow in Community Dance. We have the track now. Started. Then we have Chris Gendall, who is the Mozart Fellow. Mozart, that's music. On your left, we have Craig Cliff, who is the Burns Fellow. That's writing. And also we have the University of Otago College of Education Creative New Zealand Children's Writer in Residence, Mary Whaanga. So that's the five of the fellows. So I'd like to start by simply asking the fellows to each tell us a little bit about their career to date and their journey as an artist, and how they've actually arrived at this point here in Otago. So, Mary.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nunui kia koe Nicholas, kia koe hoki Linda. Ngā mihi nunui kia koutou katoa. Hariko tuku ngākau kia tui tēnei wā kia kōrero atu kia koutou. Kia ora. I started writing back in 86. My first children's book was published in 88. Primarily I'm known for my writing and illustrating as a children's picture book writer, illustrator. I have also done tribal histories. I've been the academic route as well. I have a PhD in Māori land law, both spellings. LAW and LORE. Somebody's been proud about that. But also, I have done treaty historians work. I've worked as a professional historian. I've written for a number of genre. All of my work is from a Māori perspective. That has been my interest and my passion. I was really pleased to get this fellowship, and the time here in Dunedin has been amazing. Really, really positive, really productive, and I'm loving it because I consider my children's writing my most important. Even though, as I say, I've done history and I've done treaty history, I really do consider the children's writing to be my most important work. And it has been a joy to be in Dunedin. Most interesting, the city truly, I have found it to be a city of literature. And met so many wonderful people, so many friendly people. Kia ora.
Thank you, Nadine.
Can I ask where you're from?
Oh, sorry, I'm from Mahia in the Northern Hawke's Bay. Grand total of 600 people live there in the winter, several thousand in the summer. Just north of Whitehall for anybody who knows where Whitehall is.
Craig.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risky thing to ask a novelist such an open question as that. So I'll try and stick to the salient points. I grew up in Palmerston North and went to a traditional boys' school, and harboured the idea or the dream of being a writer one day. And everybody around me said, "Well, that's not a very likely proposition. That would be a sustainable employment." And so I had a bob each way when I went to university. I did an English literature degree and a commerce degree, and for the next 10 or so years continued to have a bob each way, doing my degrees, working in the government using my commerce degree mostly, but then coming back to New Zealand and doing a Master of Creative Writing at Victoria University, then going back into the workforce and writing in the small hours of the morning or late at night, at which point I managed to get my first book published, which was a collection of short stories, A Man Melting, and it came out in 2010. And then my next project was a novel which came out in 2013, The Mannequin Makers, which is a bit of a historical romp with shipwrecks and murder and department store mannequins and all those sorts of things, partly set in a fictional town on the border of North Otago, South Canterbury. And that was my last published book, so that's 5 years ago. Time has been ticking, and that was one of the main reasons I was really excited about applying for the Burns Fellowship, and even more excited to actually get it was the chance to stop having a bob each way, getting to push pause on the day job, working for the Ministry of Education up in Wellington. So I've been able to devote myself full time to my next novel while I'm down here, and able to bring my young family with me as well, because that's another thing that draws on my time is family. So in juggling the day job, writing, and the family, the writing was always the one that I was dropping, but this year I've been able to have a wonderful kind of balance.
It's the luxury of the fellowship, I guess, isn't it? Chris.
Thanks. I've been here for 18 months. I'm lucky to have the Mozart Fellowship for a second year. I'm really, truly grateful for this. Before living in Dunedin, I lived in Wellington. Before that, I lived in New York City. Before that I lived in Ithaca, New York. Before that Wellington. Before that Hamilton. Before that I was just a twinkle in someone's eye. Going forward, I've been composing since I was a teenager, probably, so that's 20 years now, so you can work it out. And I did play a couple of instruments when I was a kid, all really, really dreadfully. I played piano and clarinet and trombone. And I was not only a terrible player of these instruments, I was a terrible student of them. I never practiced, and because I had quite good sight reading abilities, I'd sight read in my lessons, and that's a really bad thing for a piano teacher. And I sang in choirs and things, but composing was a real revelation for me. When I was in high school, we had an itinerant teacher who introduced me to the music of the avant-garde, and it really blew my mind open. I couldn't believe that that music and sound could do these things and could express so much more than just tradition and convention. And so I was really moved by this, and I've been sort of dedicated to it since. Studied then at Victoria University. I did undergrad there and a master's degree, and then I went to Cornell University in the US. I've been very lucky with career things. I've always had work to do. I've always had music to write, and the projects just kind of keep piling up. It's continuing. Is there something more I should say?
Caroline.
Good afternoon. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, in the United States, and I live there now. I'll be returning in 2 weeks. And I started dancing at the age of 3 and never stopped, and that's my short story. It's always been very obvious to me that that was it. And like anybody who has a deep passion for something, it's involved a lot of twists and turns and sacrifices and joys along the way. But I've always been interested in dance of all kinds, and I've pursued dance of all kinds. Have a BFA, an MFA, and a PhD in dance. I guess I'm still an active choreographer and teacher. My performance life is extremely selective at this point, since I'm aging as a performer, but also artistically. I'm extremely picky about who I work with, so it's rare that I perform anymore. But I'm active in other ways in dance. And around 10 years ago, I had a revelation that one of my favorite activities was actually to sit down with another dancer over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and listen to them talk about their lives in dance. And somewhere along the line, I had an aha moment that these stories were in danger of being lost because nobody was recording oral histories with dancers. So occasionally we get biographies of very famous dancers, but I had known so many people that had incredible insights through their careers in the arts, specifically dance. So I became a volunteer oral historian specializing in dance. That's what my PhD is in. And my Caroline Plummer Fellowship is rooted in oral histories with dancers throughout the area. When I say throughout the area, I mean Dunedin. But Dunedin has a very rich dance community with many different kinds of dance. So to me, it's quite a tapestry. And it's been one of the hugest honors of my life just to be here among you. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Campbell. So I make art. Before being here, I lived in Auckland. I've been making art outside of an institution for about 10 years now. And This is the first time I've done it without a day job. I work in most mediums. I don't really have a medium, but I like to be open to lots of them. I like to work at night. I don't really know the structure. It's this kind of talking.
Okay.
That's it.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank you, Campbell. Some of you have mentioned the balance that you have in your journey of having this passion or this skill, this creative skill, but that you actually have to have a proper job as well. Sort of a cracked record thing, I guess, the world over. So you've all got other strings to your bows, have you? Other skill bases that you can call upon when you're not being creative.
Mm-hmm.
So yours is in the Ministry of Education, is that right?
Yes,
At the moment.
and the longer I've gone on with the career, the more it has become creative, the more I've been able to kind of actualise myself within the workplace. And so I work in the policy field, which some people think is all creative writing. But also, as you move up the hierarchy and be able to manage teams and those kinds of things, I think they're the same sorts of traits that make a really good writer: empathy, and being able to think outside the box are also really great traits as a manager, as a human being. So, if you were to read my short stories that I wrote when I was at the early stages of my sentence in a cubicled world, as I sort of viewed it at the time, it was quite a jaundiced view of that. But as I've gone on, I sort of actually got to a point where I was confronted with the choice: do I want to kind of move away from a full-time office job and commit myself to the writing? And at that stage, late 20s, early 30s, I said, actually, no, I'm going to keep doing this and keep building up that experience and that human capital, because there'll always be the point that I could chuck it all in later on down the road. So it's been an interesting, like if I were to tell that to myself 10 years ago, I would have probably said I was crazy and to just go for it and follow your passion. But it's interesting that and having a family as well kind of gives a different dimension to those kinds of decisions. So I'm nowhere near as cynical about the day job than I used to be.
So it is realistic, is it, in the 21st century to assume that you can't really make a living as a writer, as a musician, as an artist, as a dancer? Go on.
Well,
Go on.
Obviously, you don't enter the arts for the money.
No, I didn't say about money,
Yeah,
but as
yeah.
a living. I mean, as a profession. The word profession means to profess, to be able to give your all to it. So realistically,
there are a few people who do it, and,
Yeah.
and they can make it work. And there have been times where I've made it work. I had a day job before this at Radio New Zealand Concert. I was a producer for an arts current affairs show. It's now called RNZ Concert because they rebranded.
wonder how much that cost.
Exactly. And that was good and kind of related because it was about music and about the arts, and it used some of my skills, especially in terms of things like sound engineering and writing. And I also was able to make a few programs myself, some shows about specific composers, which they've also stopped doing. Interesting. And yeah, so that was good, and I've taught quite a lot, but it tends to be pretty much related to what you do anyway, so teaching composition or teaching music theory or something like this. So I guess it's hard to survive by
Yeah.
by commissions alone, but you can work in related fields. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's bad that you can't do it full time. I'm just saying that realistically, Caroline, so you're going to go home to Texas, which is a long way from Dunedin, where you've been for the last 6 months, having the luxury, I guess I would call it, of this fellowship. How are you going to pay the bills?
I have no idea.
Oh. That wasn't
I'll
the
be
answer I was
blunt.
looking for.
I'm very lucky in that I love to teach, and I dare say I'm good at it. So I often pick up teaching jobs. I'm often a part-time, what they call adjunct faculty in the United States for different universities in my area. I like to say I'm everyone's favorite adjunct. One of the problems in the United States right now is that adjuncting at universities has become a hole in which you sink and never recover. The statistics are frightening. 80% of teaching now is done by part-time adjuncts rather than tenured professors. 80%. And part-time adjuncts do not get any benefits, such as health insurance. And they're paid less than minimum wage. So it's awful. In my younger days, I picked up anything to pay the bills. I deboned chickens one summer. You know that game where you tell 2 truths and a lie? I always tell that one. I deboned chickens for a summer because it's so strange. And I've done a lot of retail jobs because those are easy to pick up seasonal work, but it sucks my soul dry.
Yeah.
I'm good at it because I have the skills. It makes me want to just throw myself off a bridge. I hate it, but Macy's, I'm available this Christmas. So, I'll just, when I get home, as I was saying earlier, I'll throw my applications at any university that'll take them and hope for the best. And certainly this fellowship bolsters my visibility, in a job market where realistically there will be at least 300 applicants for every job opening. And so, I'm profoundly grateful. I can't believe it when I look at my online banking account and I see deposits in there from the university. So,
Campbell, so you said before that this is the first time you've been full-time. You've had the luxury of being full-time creator.
Yeah.
Does that worry you, or will you just? What will you do? I mean, do you want to be a full-time creator, or is that
I'm not sure if I do.
You're not sure if you do?
Well,
okay.
It's stressful, It's a different. I don't know. Maybe I'm still getting used to it. I was lucky enough to escape my job just before the impending restructure, so I don't think my job disappeared. But I've worked at the public library in Auckland for the last 9 years, which is pretty. I don't know. It works.
Okay.
I'll do what I can. I'm trying not to get used to my life currently. Try and do, but I'd still try and find times to starve. That struggle stuff. Good at that.
Yeah. So Mary, you're a writer in all kinds of ways, I guess, are you? So
Yes.
career-wise, or
When I started back in '86, writing my first children's book, I was actually a full-time farmer.
okay.
Farming my own land at Mahia, small block. Did it rainy days, weekends, when I wasn't out on the farm. Like the others, I've had to do whatever, and that has taken me some interesting places. I worked at Auckland Museum for a few years. I've been lucky to pick up a couple of fellowships along the way. And recently it's been the contract work as a contract historian, and the idea is generally I do a contract and try and save enough out of it to tide me over when I'm not on a contract. But this year, in January, I turned 65. I'm on the pension. I can be a full-time children's writer. That's great. It's quite what I want.
Something we can all look forward to.
Just hold on.
Yeah, watch the clock. Thank you. Campbell, you mentioned just a moment ago that it's quite stressful being an artist, or where you are. I'd like to ask you each about, not necessarily stress, but the creative process that you have, the inspiration that you get from wherever, and the sort of methodology. Basically, I'm asking how you, sort of the empty canvas syndrome, where you start and how it works.
Okay.
So you can start.
Okay, yeah, I'll start. There's a sort of myth about composers that ideas kind of come to you and that you sit there and that you're just the vessel through which the music flows, and it's all really beautiful and it's never hard work, and it's all really elegant and poetic, and it's all totally bogus, and kind of props up something that's equally bogus, which is the myth of the genius, because it's really hard work and mostly really technical. So I try these days. I start from a place of sound usually. So I have been more and more listening to the world around me, and actually making recordings of certain things that enter my life, and analysing that, both using my ear and technology, and then working with the materials that generates. So, for example, a piece I finished not long ago, I'll just say I don't have perfect pitch, but I'm a pencil and paper composer, so I work with a tuning fork. So I'll just be writing and I use a tuning fork for pitch reference. And so a piece that I finished recently, I recorded the tuning fork and analysed that sound, the way the colour works in it, and used that to generate harmonic material. And so from there I wrote a piano trio for NZ Trio. They played that a few weeks ago. So that's sort of how I work usually these days. It always changes, and it's always about the process more than it is about the initial idea. The idea or the sort of thing that goes in the program note is never really the thing that drives your work. So which is ironic sometimes. But yeah, it's always about the doing rather than the impulse, I think.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So Caroline, how do you create?
Well, this has been an interesting journey because I entered into doc school as an artist, as a choreographer, and fortunately it's one of the very rare dance PhDs at Texas Women's University, and they welcome that forward-thinking scholarship combining artistic process with research process. And so it's not very different for me to choreograph a dance and to structure research in dance, in that, I have an overall curiosity about something, and then I start looking at what I can find. I follow my curious threads, and all the time I'm very aware that it's my view that's making these choices. It's not the truth. So I'm extremely comfortable with the idea that I'm creating the research because I'm used to choreographing. And a lot of researchers, particularly in the sciences, but all fields, I think, have an anxiety about objectivity, and it's just never been an issue for me at all. Of course, we don't have any objectivity. In terms of oral history interviewing, it's just been a natural fit for me because I'm very comfortable improvising. And so the oral history methodology requires that you follow the lead of the person you're interviewing. So we don't come in with a set questionnaire. And everyone that I've talked to in Dunedin, I've never come in with the set questions and asked them the same questions. I just come in and I start listening. And then I follow their leads. And this is so much like dance improvisation, and it's a natural fit for me. And it's super fun.
Campbell, your creative process, inspiration, methodology, starting now.
I try not to.
Okay. So just,
No, I don't know. I guess that one thing I'm finding interesting about the fellowship is that, like, I go to a room to make something rather than go to a job and think about what I would be doing if I wasn't at this job. Because I don't know. I think sometimes the best ideas come to you when you're not thinking. You can't. I don't really seek out. I don't know. You've sort of got to do it by not doing it a little bit, and definitely, like, I don't think I've ever made anything good without failing to make something about 3 times before. Like, I think failure is really important, or like just trying to do something. I think sometimes you can think yourself out of doing anything, So I think it's important just to like always just do something, even if it's rubbish. Then you're working with the material that you have. Yeah.
so it's different all the time, every time. You just do what you do.
A little bit, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still figuring out how to structure a day. How to. I think walking. Quite often I'll get fed up at the studio and then go for a big walk. Often I come up with ideas when I'm going out, because I'm an up and down kind of person, like when I'm going from the down to the up, the idea will happen.
Yeah.
Sleeping, going to the gym. Often when I'm not very, I'm a little bit deaf, I think, and often I'll mishear people saying something, and there's an idea right there,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Mary, process, inspiration.
Process inspiration. I started writing because my dad was really good at telling me histories, legends, and he shared them really well orally. And being a full-time farmer at the time, I couldn't do what he was doing. I thought I'd always wanted to write, so that's why I started writing. Since I've been down here, this teenage novel, I've approached it like a contract, like one of my history contracts. I've got this finite time to write a teenage novel, my first teenage novel, and I've approached it, I'm going into work today and I'm going to write, and my writing has flowed. A lot of what I'm trying to say is to present a Māori viewpoint, because I'm aware that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm trying to set the record straight in an interesting way.
Okay.
So, and I'll give an instance of that, is that 2 weeks ago I saw an article on the news about a guy in the far north who had supposedly sent some skulls that he reckoned were from a hangi pit, and that they were pre-Māori Europeans that were here, and he said that one of them was Tūrehu. Now, coincidentally, the lead character in my teenage novel is half Tūrehu, and in Wairoa we have a lot of oral histories about the Tūrehu, about what they look like. One of my aunts was kidnapped by a Tūrehu when she was 5 or 6, one of my father's sisters. So she told me and what happened, described the woman, the girl, and so we do have these stories. And I thought, it's something there are things that I think about for years that I think the record needs straightening a wee bit. And so I'm trying to do that in my fiction as well as in my non-fiction writing.
Okay. Lovely. So, Craig, what's your process, your inspiration?
Like Mary, my process this year is to treat it like a day job. I call it going to work. It's important that I try and model the language. I get on my bike and I ride into my office at the Arts Building at the university. Try and be there from 9 till 4, something like that. And I bash away at the keyboard as much as possible. When I don't have this luxury of time, my preference is to write early in the morning. So I finished my last novel in 2-hour chunks, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Which is challenging. It's even more challenging when you have little ones who like to wake up at 5 a.m. So that was one of the reasons I really needed to buy a big chunk of time to finish this current novel. And yeah, with a novel with an extended piece of narrative, you do need to work on it as every day or as close to every day as possible to keep it moving, because there is a lot of slog involved, and you find yourself getting further and further away from those moments of inspiration. I have techniques to be able to both continue with the process. So I use an Excel spreadsheet where I put down my word count every day, and I have different columns for the novel or for short stories or poetry or non-fiction. And I do analytics. I look at what days I'm being the most productive, and so the fortnight number 12, which is the one that's most recently completed. We're halfway through fortnight 13. For those of you playing at home, fortnight 12 was really, really productive for me. I was writing 1,200 words a day during the week, and nothing in the weekends, which was way more productive than some other weeks and fortnights. Quantity doesn't equal quality, but quantity is a precursor to having quality. You've got to have 100,000 words before you can trim it back to and start again, and those kinds of things. So I have these things, and some of it's been, I use Excel a lot in the day job and in government, so it's kind of tricking myself that this is like a contract. It's like there is a manager will walk in the door at any moment and look over your shoulder and saying, how are you going? But then it's also making sure that it is a creative act, and it's a passionate act, and that you are this will be something, hopefully that will be put between two covers that lots of people will read, and then you'll be forced to talk about it in situations like this, and you want it to be something that you will absolutely be proud of and continue to own. So I find myself always having to try and plug back into what got me started, what was it that got me so excited that I thought I could work on this for 12 months or 24 months. It's about the way that I come up with my ideas, sort of like Campbell and the others were saying, they just come out of living your life, and you note them down. But I find that I never get started on something, whether it's a short story, a novel, or even a poem, when I find two disparate ideas suddenly connect. So I might have written these two things down in my notebooks 12 months apart, and it's another 6 months later, and then I suddenly see the connective tissue between these two ideas. And it's actually that connective tissue that's the work that I'll be doing to complete that work. So my novel that came out in 2013, I had I think I must have dreamt it because I don't really remember coming up with the idea, but I wrote down on a post-it note, a window dresser raises his children to become living mannequins. Filed that away. Then at a later date, I was actually travelling around South America, and I went to a museum in Ushuaia, which is right at the bottom of South America. There was an exhibit on shipwrecks, and it was talking about the end of the golden age of sail power, when steamships started to come to the fore, and it said unscrupulous ship owners used to send their wooden sail ships around Cape Horn in the hopes that they would wreck and get the insurance money. And so there was nothing really connecting those two ideas until I came across, months or years later, in a history book, the story about the people who would carve the figureheads on sailing ships. That when that job was in less demand, they started making those cigar store Indians you see outside, pharmacists in the US. And I thought, well, maybe if in the New Zealand context, instead of making these cigar store Indians, they would make mannequins. And suddenly there was a connection there. It involved a round the world trip, it involved some shipwrecks, and that was what I would devote 2 years of my life to. And when I was sort of felt like I was banging my head up against a wall, or sort of this Sisyphean task of finishing this novel, I always sort of looked to the North Pole and the South Pole and seeing what I was trying to do here and connect these two things, and so that was how I got to the end of it.
It's fascinating. Both the writers have said that the creative process necessitates writing words, lots of words every day. Do you write lots of notes every day?
No.
No. Do you paint lots of things every day? Do you just do stuff every day?
I've been writing lots of words every day.
Oh. But it's interesting that there's that perception. I think we all know that writers will generally like to have a word count per day as a discipline out of which something will be created, which is easy to understand from a writing perspective, but it's maybe slightly different in yours.
Some people try and cover passages of time every day, but I think that's a really dreadful idea, because it makes it seem like things are regular and nothing's ever regular. And so in music you really have to embrace the irregular, and if you don't, then it will be really dull.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a fascinating story about the research, that the way that those things all just came together. But in actual fact, you said earlier that in actual fact that particular novel was set in North Otago. Is that one? Is that the same one? North Otago, South Canterbury?
Yeah, so halfway between Timaru and Oamaru, so I called the place Maru Maru, sort of mashing them together.
Oh, okay.
And that unlocked a lot of potential to be able to borrow from various aspects of the region without having to, would I make some of those same decisions again now, knowing what I know? I might treat it differently and be. Sometimes I think I would pick an actual place and be a lot more faithful to it. There is a passage in that novel where the character, the figurehead carver who washes up in New Zealand, comes to Port Chalmers. That's his first entry point into New Zealand. And by that point, I'd been writing a historical novel for a year, and I thought, gosh, this is great. I'm in Port Chalmers, and there's a little cameo of a tailor who was a historical figure that I came across in newspaper clippings through Papers Past, the online repository of our newspapers, and I found all of these court cases that this tailor, who was a little bit unscrupulous, was in, and so I used real characters in a real place in a novel that I thought I was making everything up. So I changed my rules as I went along. So
creative process. For all of you, the process or the creative work that you do, are you doing this for yourselves, your public, or your audience? And if so, let's hear about that. And if not, does that affect the creative process when you know that you're trying to produce something for somebody else to experience and or enjoy? So do you create with an audience in mind, or is it just something that you have to do, and who cares about the audience or your public?
I'll start
Go
that
on.
one because I've done both.
You've done both, yes. Yeah.
You know, having been a contract historian, and particularly for treaty claims, it's very specific what you have to write about and what can be included. I write because I've always wanted to, and always have. What I'm doing now, and I'm working on 2 novels. I've got the teenage one well underway. I'm also working on an adult novel, and I'm finding that I am explaining about us, about Māori, about the people. Having been through the treaty claims process, I'm aware that not even our own people, not even Māori, are all that familiar with the process and the human cost. So I'm trying to convey some of that, how we really live, what the real cost to us is of treaty claims, the conflicts, and basically that we do have a quite different viewpoint. I go back to that story about the tūrehu and the patupārehi. You know, they've always been portrayed as fairies. They're not. They were an earlier people, and we intermarried with them. We didn't slaughter. When I say we, Māori didn't slaughter them. You know, and it's things like that. I want to, because I believe that fiction can teach history sometimes better than a straight history tome. So and I do have, in that respect, I do have an audience in mind, and that would be all New Zealanders.
Okay. Yeah. Craig, do you write with a readership to the forefront?
No.
No.
If I did, I'd be failing at what I do, really, because I write for an ideal reader, a singular, and what happens when the book is out there is kind of is another world to me, particularly where I am at the moment. I am thinking about what I'm putting onto the page and what that can convey, and is that going to be comprehensible to anybody, but is it going to really light this kind of person's soul on fire that I'm trying to write for, and they may or may not actually exist. There are real people that read my work, that are out there that can read my work, but I'm finding I put that phase off later and later. So nobody's read the novel that I'm working on yet. My wife used to read, you know, I'd give her 10 pages at a time and she would read things as my first reader. I've got 50,000 words and she hasn't read anything yet. So I'm finding the longer I get into this kind of life, the more I try and be strategic about real people reading the work, so that they don't kind of come into the writing process too early.
Chris, are you writing with a performer and or audience always in mind?
Yeah, you asked me this question last year, actually, and I think what I said.
Shush.
No, it's good. It's good. I think what I said was that I very much consider the listener. I don't like the word audience as much as listener, which
you said that last year.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because I think that audience connotes a commercial imperative that I want nothing to do with. I don't care how much money people pay to go to a concert. I don't care how loud they clap, but I do care that they experience it, and I do want to give them something to experience. It's just that experience can be anything. They don't have to like it. They don't have to. They don't have to, want to buy it. It's any experience or any response is a valid and good response. But I'll also say this: I think that that more and more that I really feel for the audience, for music these days. I feel that that people are often telling the audience that they're stupid, and there's a lot of time and effort going into kind of selling things to an audience, and and trying to make it all very easily digestible, and the audience doesn't need this. They need something to experience. That it doesn't have to be they don't have to buy it. You know, they don't have to be sold it. And so I'm feeling for audiences these days. They'll turn up to something and there'll be a kind of infomercial type activity that happens before any new piece, and they'll be given everything that they need to do to try and get a piece, and then if they don't get it, they freak out and they think there's something wrong with them. And you don't have to get it; you just have to experience it. That's something that I see coming up more and more. So, yeah.
As Director of Arts Festival Dunedin, I have a different take, I think, on a lot of that. Caroline, as a creator,
Yes.
are you creating for your dancers when you were a dancer, or choreographically, or for an audience? Which comes first?
You know, for me, I would have to say that in some way, it would be a bit disingenuous for me to say I don't understand the question. But in some ways, I don't understand the question. I just feel if I'm not paying attention to me, or the audience, or the context, or the times, then I'm not paying attention enough.
Mm.
It's all together, it's all connected. So, you know, as I've matured as a choreographer, I think I've just come to accept, well, I'm going to follow this thread because I'm curious about it. And, oh, look, there's a synchronicity with this coming in from the news. I mean, it's sort of similar to the creative process we've been talking about. And, of course, in the post-postmodern era, you know, I like to give the audience the freedom to get or not get, or walk out, or love it. Something very interesting, though, is that as a historian as well as a dancer, I've studied history of audiences. And it's fascinating, and there's almost no scholarship on it. But what you can find is unreal and so fascinating. And the cultural idea of sitting in a darkened theater and being quiet and clapping at certain times, these are all products of a certain Western, for lack of a better word, agenda. And so that artist-audience relationship, you know, should be questioned and is constantly being questioned, and has been, particularly since the 60s, and it's really fun to disrupt it a bit. There's nothing wrong with having that, you know, I'm in the dark and I'm paying attention experience. But what am I trying to say here? It's so much richer if you don't take it for granted.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Director of Arts Festival Dunedin, I could discuss that for a long time. What the audience does and doesn't do, and what we should expect of them, and what their experience is, and whether it should be in the dark or whether they should be able to come and go, and whether you need to be concerned that they don't get it. All those things. Yeah. But anyway, it's not talking about me. Campbell, can I ask you the question about who you're creating your work for? Do you have a public in mind, or does that not necessarily matter?
Sometimes. I don't know if I think about it a lot. I mean, I generally like to make things. I think I like to kind of blindly just make work and then scoop it out later, you know, like see what's there when a time comes when I need something. What have I got to work with? You know, what can I add? But yeah, I'm kind of surprised with what people like. You know, like, I don't really, I don't know a lot about it.
Do you know when, or how do you know when any work, if I can use that word, is complete? When do you know to stop? That this particular piece is now finished. We know the stories of painters or poets or musicians who keep tinkering, don't know when to put the paintbrush down and say, that's it, it's finished. Do you know when it's finished?
Well, I think I do at the time. You know, like.
Well, you've got
I
an
think
exhibition
so.
on here at the moment. Is it finished? Must be. Good.
But sometimes it's sometimes you have to put something down for a while and pick it up later.
Yeah,
and like, you know, I think I like to think I like it's all on the ground and I scoop bits up and I, you know, push bits down further into the ground maybe.
Right. Okay.
I don't know.
So, Chris, do you know when you're finished a piece of music? It's a
Yeah.
deadline, probably, is it?
Yeah, that often comes into it. But usually I do. I sometimes revise, but I'm not one of those composers who are always revising. And yeah, I like to to have things done. It feels good, and it feels like a nice way to finish things off. But I don't like it when music feels like it's got a clear start and finish. That's something that I have a bit of an aesthetic problem with.
So you mean a piece of music?
Yeah, so I try and make things feel quite open. So I try and avoid the kind of traditional framings of music, the kind of the kind of cadence and exposition. These things are things that I avoid, and I just feel that it's a more natural reflection of the universe or of our world if things feel like they. Yeah.
Do you know when to, I was going to say put your pen down, shut the computer?
You push send on the...
Oh, send?
That's,
Oops.
For a book, it's, that's publishers' timeframes rather than...
Okay.
And you kind of... I've pushed out the publication timeframe a few times on my novels, so it's kind of a conversation between you and the publisher, and you end up... I remember with my novel, I had sent it off as the final thing for it to then go and get read by the editor, and I got the first lot of edits back when I was in the delivery room with my wife for our first child. So I know that there was kind of other time frames at play within that process as well. With something like a short story or a poem where there's nobody beating down your door for it, and you've got to finish it and then decide where you send it off to. In some ways, you get to finish a lot more short stories than you do novels, just because they're so much quicker to write. So I feel now that I do have a sense for, if not when it's finished, at least when to stop working on it and go and work on something else. Yeah. So I started the year by, February I just wrote short stories so that I could get back into the flow of being a full-time writer without the pressure of just going straight into the novel. And so I wrote two and a half short stories in February. Now, sitting here in July, they're not finished, especially the half a story, but the one that I thought was the most complete, no, I know that I will go back in and there will be some rework, and that's very common, so I tend to do that. I tend to get to the end and then leave it.
Put it aside, yes. So you put it aside because you knew it wasn't quite finished?
No, because I wanted to start working on the novel.
Okay.
Yeah. And the impetus to pick it up again will be, someone commissioning something or something that I really want to submit for, and I'll go through and I'll have hopefully multiple stories that are in a state where a fortnight of dedicated work will be able to get them to a kind of finished point.
Right. Yeah. So Mary, do you know when you're finished, or do you tinker when you're finished, or change words, or how does it work for you?
With the picture books, I've got 5 of those out. There's an end, and then I work backwards. So with the latest one, the Singing Dolphin, for instance, we had this wonderful dolphin, Mopo, come to live in Mahia for 2 years. So I had my end point, and the question I asked myself was, why is he there? And then I wrote it in a legend style. So writing in legend style, you know where your end point is. Like, you know, with the 7 whales, which was my first book, the end point was we have these 7 maunga that we believe were whales. So that's my end point. And so why are they there? How did they get there? So with the picture books, there's a very definite beginning, middle, end. With the novel, I had an idea, and it changed dramatically the second week I was here, from one novel to a trilogy. I was aiming for 40,000 words. I got to 38,000, and I thought, I think this one's finished. And then I went back and tinkered it. But yeah, I do have that structure, beginning, middle, end. And probably that's been reinforced by the contract historian work, by the academic work.
Yeah. With a novel or a book of any description, it's a book. It lasts. It's something that's physical and has a shelf life, I guess you'd call it. But with a piece of music or a painting or a dance work, music and dance in particular, maybe dance most of all, it's very ephemeral. It's here and then it's gone and it's lost. It's a moment in time. Music can be recreated, and a painting goes, or a work of art ends up somewhere else. It's somebody else's. It's not yours anymore. Does that does that hurt to let it go and never see it again?
I'll speak first as the ephemeral. I was wondering why you didn't ask me when I knew that a dance was finished, and I suspected it was the artifact moment of it. And in scholarship, we talk about that all the other arts have artifacts, and dance does not. You know, you can debate that all day and get paid for it if you're lucky enough to become a professor. But you know, the performing arts have always been had a little bit of a difficulty getting scholarship because of lack of artifact. And even theater can have the script, but dance didn't have anything until the 20th century. It was all body-to-body transfer.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of theorizing that that's why dance scholarship is so young compared to the other arts, is because there weren't people that could scrutinize a piece of paper and analyze it in that way. It's accepted in my profession that there is no final product, because every time somebody does a dance, it's different. It's always going to be different. Every iteration is a different iteration. There is no one version that is the version to base it all off. There are notation systems now, like for music, but that's also problematic because you have to base a notation system on a standard. And that standard is going to be culturally and historically situated. So you immediately have problems with that. And video, I'm sure all of you have had circumstances where video has failed you in some way or another, and you certainly don't get the third dimensional quality of it. And if one dancer passes behind another, you'll never know what they did. So, or maybe they messed up that night. Is that version of the messed up choreography going to be the one that's replicated for the next several centuries? So there's so many possible ways of being wrong. And just as a choreographer, I accept that every single iteration of my work is going to be different. And I have to accept that. I can't control it. Then when you get the audience in there, there's a whole nother thing. But is it sad? Yes, It is. But everything passes, and you have that sadness. It's life, in that sense. You know, I like to say that it's ephemeral, but it's not ephemeral, in that the effects of it will always continue to have a ripple effect. And certainly when I interview dancers, it's like we're in the moment.
Yeah.
And so there is something that lives on. Absolutely. There's something that lives on. Yeah.
Campbell, do you take ownership of a work, and then when you release it or sell it or something, is that a breaking up experience?
It's kind of different. I guess I make lots of different types of work, but like it's kind of sad, and sometimes it's sadder to still have it. But you know, sometimes I definitely like when a show goes up. I definitely experience some kind of a depression, or like, you know, like. But that's because of the end of a project.
Yeah,
that's more like
okay.
but I'm not super attached to.
Okay. So
Yeah, I don't want to have like 3 adults in my house full of stuff.
Okay, right, okay. Yeah. So as a musician, do you get frustrated? Sorry, as a composer, do you get frustrated or with a performance? Because your baby's been given away, basically. As a composer, you are only half of the. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's inherently collaborative.
Yeah.
You have a score and you give it as much detail as you like, but it's still down to the performers to interpret that, and you're working with current practices and put as much detail in as you can, but there's still an interpretive quality. There's a full range of human emotion that's attached to a rehearsal and performance of your work. It's sometimes heartbreaking, it's sometimes hilarious, it's sometimes wonderful, and they all come up. A conductor turned around to me once during a rehearsal, and I was talking to him about a few things, and he said, "Are you okay? Did you have a heart attack?" It was really, that was a bad one. But it kind of became hilarious, I guess. So yeah, there's a full range of possibilities. But also, like dance, notation's a great thing, and it communicates a lot. But it has to tie into performance practice. And now there are whole schools just based around how we read older scores,
yes.
Even just Mozart, even Mendelssohn, so things that.
So do you want to quickly talk us through you said that very recently the NZ Trio. Were you in the rehearsal process with them? Were you in the room with them when they were reading or rehearsing, so that they could talk with you?
Yes and no. So I have a really great relationship with them.
Everybody does.
Yeah, they're really they're some of the best. Actually, Justine's just left the trio, so they'll replace her, but give them a gold medal and knight and damehoods and all that. I did 2 sort of collaborative things with them. They're really open about what they want from composers. They just want you to write, and they'll do everything they can to make it work, which is awesome. But when I had finished kind of a final draft of the piece, I went and just had one session with them while they were reading, and that was really good. I didn't actually revise anything after that. I was really happy with how it went, and that was really just useful to be able to hear it and to know that I wasn't just totally off my face. So there was that, and then they did all the kind of nuts and bolts rehearsing, and then I went back the week before the concert, and it was sounding great. Yeah. But my music's really, really hard. It's really, really, really hard. Really hard.
Hard to play.
To play, yeah. It's really, the rhythms are really, really hard. I use a lot of microtones, which are difficult to tune. It's really dense and tricky. And so what's nice is they've performed it twice, and both performances have been slightly different, but it still feels great even when things aren't perfect. It's once you get to a kind of certain level, it's still going to be a great thing to experience. But yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you all whether you ever look back on any of your earlier work, published, performed, presented, and wish you'd done it differently, or think that it wasn't in the public arena, or that as an artist you've moved on, and what you did then was nice then, but now it's you wish that people wouldn't label you by it, maybe. You know, that you're a different artist, different creative person now, early work as opposed to later works. Is that a journey that you are on or experience? Yeah? No.
I'll start. I started with a legend, a picture book still in print. I don't think I would change what I've done, but you can see, because I illustrate as well, you can see the progression in my illustrations. I have learned over the years better techniques, helped by the fact that an early publisher, Graham Beatley, said to me by the time they published my third book that I needed to learn to draw people. So by the time I got round to doing the treaty, I had learned how to draw people, and that was wonderful. When I thought I can paint my people the way they really are, that was a wonderful moment for me, and so wonderful advice from their publisher. But change anything? Not yet. I haven't.
Sure, that's good. Yes. Craig, is there a development that is visible?
To me, so I have two novels in the bottom drawer somewhere that I wrote and abandoned before I managed to get my book of short stories published. And I am very glad that those two novels didn't get published, are not easily discoverable. I'm very glad I wrote them. They're a necessary part of my development. But so the first novel I wrote very quickly when I was 21, and I don't think a 21-year-old male should spend that much time alone in a room doing anything. But it was part of a process, and I think even my book of short stories, there was 17 or 18 stories in there, and I had another 20 or 25 stories that I could have chosen. So I was selective there about what went in. So I'm pretty comfortable with what's out there in the public, and there will be. I do find if I go back, I don't ever go back and take my book off the shelf unless I have to do a reading, and there will be times like any page I will sort of trip over something and go, gosh, I wish I had phrased that slightly differently, but that's natural. I do that whenever I'm reading what I'm working on. Like if I read yesterday's work, I'll do that as well. So, but I'm happy with the shape and the form of what's out there.
You, Chris?
Yeah, I removed some things from my catalogue a couple of years ago, just things that I did when I was younger. Not because I wish I hadn't done them. They were again a part of my development, but there were things I wrote when I was a student, and I've changed quite a lot since then. So it's okay that they exist and that they happen. I just I don't really want them being performed anymore.
Okay.
So I removed them.
So it does happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I went through quite a big change about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, I'm totally happy with everything. And there are a few younger things. I was lucky to have kind of opportunities when I was a student, and I took them, and some of them still exist, and I haven't removed them necessarily. It's not just like everything, but there are a few things that I just don't really think the world needs to.
So Karen, have you got any stories like that of happy with all your work, or thinking that, or seeing that you've actually different now than you were, earlier on as a
Oh, I'm
particularly at all?
absolutely
Yeah.
different now than
Yeah.
as a choreographer than I was earlier on, and I just never thought about remounting some of my works. I just keep going. I think that if I were to remount some of them, I think they would be equally as. I would be equally as intrigued by all of them, but the context will have changed. And for example, a piece of music that was brand new when it premiered would now be well known, or the composer will have a whole different world. So the context would be different, and that might be interesting. I guess I'm used to the ephemerality of it. I sometimes feel sorry for more well-known choreographers who the theaters tell them exactly which of their repertory they have to perform. Say, oh, we want this moneymaker that's from 10 years ago. We don't want a new piece. I understand it fully, but I do feel sorry sometimes for those choreographers because I know them and I know they've moved on and their interests have gotten richer and richer and more developed. So I feel sorry sometimes in that for others. I'm not that well known.
So Campbell, have you got stuff that is that you would prefer to have somewhere in your attic?
I have a lot of regrets, but not
Regrets.
so much works. It's
Okay.
more like things I've said.
Oh, okay.
Um,
We are recording today.
yeah, exactly. I'll probably regret every second word of this. But as well, one thing I think that Caroline was talking about is like you sort of get put in a box. I think as an artist, I don't know about any other country, but in New Zealand because that's the country I know, and it can be pretty frustrating as an artist. You want to keep going, and like if you're sort of you're expected to make a work that you've made already. That's kind of like I don't get out of bed in the morning to remake the same work. I want to go places with it, but the audience sometimes doesn't want you to go places. So that's a frustration.
One more comment I'd like from you each, and that is that the fellowships at the University of Otago, there is no compulsion that during your tenure of 6 months or 12 months for you to actually produce anything. My question quickly is that a freedom or an impediment that you are not required to actually do anything, produce anything? Did you not know that?
I feel like it's like one of those things that I remind myself of when I'm feeling real bleak about everything, but like essentially like it's kind of irrelevant because I want to make stuff, like every now and again, someone will remind me, it's like, oh, you don't actually have, like you can just have a few weeks where you don't do anything, but I'm definitely beating myself up about it, if I don't. It's hard to let go and not make,
So Caroline, is it a pressure to you to produce something?
I feel similarly. I would be working anyway, I throw my all into it anyway. Deadlines can be so helpful to get things done, but sometimes it's good to let the process keep going and rather than foreclosing it prematurely. But I just keep working anyway.
Yeah. So Chris, you don't have to do anything for the last 18 months or for the next 6. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, well, it's a great luxury, and I think if you did want to just spend a whole lot of time just researching or just gestating, I guess that could be nice, but it's a great opportunity to get things done, and I've tried to do things that I've wanted to do for ages but hadn't had the time to schedule them in. So either like things that I wasn't getting paid for example, or things that people asked me for years ago and I just couldn't squeeze it in. So so that's been really nice. But I guess there's a little pressure anyway, because we know that these things are quite competitive. You know, we know that a lot of people apply for them, and it's a lot of talented people whose place you're taking. So yeah, you do feel a lot of pressure in that regard.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Craig, is it an impediment or a freedom?
It's a freedom, I think. Like the others have all mentioned, that sort of personal accountability that you have. You don't really need anything else to be loaded on top of it. But like when I was explaining to my colleagues at work in Wellington that I would be coming down here for the year, and they were very much so, what do you have to produce? What are the accountability frameworks? You know, very bureaucratic.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I can do anything. You know, the university's accountability framework is not apparent. But there are, first and foremost, my wife, who I was asking to leave her job and come down with our 2 kids under the age of 5, uproot the family so that I can buy this time to write. So that's a big familial responsibility. Yes. Then there's the fact that, as I said, it's been 5 years since my last book came out. So there's kind of my publisher, who would be a little bit bemused if I didn't have anything coming out of this year. And then New Zealand's a small place, and there are other opportunities, none as well remunerated as the Burns, but for writers there are other residencies. But people talk, and so if you are the Burns Fellow who spent the whole year at the pub, and you still haven't produced anything after another 5 years, then that starts to be a little bit self-limiting. So.
Yeah. So Mary, have you?
Just echoing what everybody else has said. It's such a luxury to just concentrate on what you want to do. It's been a real freedom. Coming so far away from home has been really good. People can't ring me up and ask me something about the treaty claims, for instance.
Right.
But yeah, I do feel, like Craig said, just kind of obliged to, and I want to put something out. Yeah. I want to make the best use of this time that I possibly can.
Beautiful. Had anybody got any questions that they would like to ask?
Hi, Mary, you mentioned a couple of people that have been influential on you. Your father, for instance, and you mentioned Graham Beatty giving you some good advice. I'd just like to check in with the other creatives whether anyone had sort of specifically had a good advice or influenced as a mentor or whatever in their own lives.
Yeah, I've been really lucky to be in contact with amazing people, starting probably with the composer Jack Boddy, who died a couple of years ago. He was we remained very good friends even when he wasn't my teacher, and I often say that if it wasn't for Jack I wouldn't be a composer, and I think that's the truth. Not just because I was inspired to go and study with him, and he was my teacher, but he also gave me actual opportunities as well. He gave me things to work on and led me down that path. It was really a really great thing. So there wasn't any specific piece of advice. He was just he was a real linchpin of the compositional community, and he's still leaving a bit of a gap. It's been a couple of years, but yeah, he still leaves a bit of a gap that we're all kind of struggling to fill. So Jack would be a big one for me. On influences, I think as a writer, because we do have those artefacts that can travel through time, my place of inspiration was the Palmerston North City Library as a teenager, going through sort of normal teenage things, and I found a refuge in the library, and would take books off the shelves in the contemporary fiction space. So a lot of my, I feel like I have a sort of a one-way relationship with a lot of writers like Kurt Vonnegut,
Douglas Coupland, people that I may have outgrown in many ways in terms of my practice, but were crucial to get me to where I am today. So, and then once you get, you do stick your head above the parapet and start to be a published writer, and you find yourself picking your jaw up off the floor and saying, "Wow, I've just been hanging out with David Mitchell or someone like that." You do find that that everybody is. It's a great thing to meet someone whose books you've really admired and find that they are an admirable person as well, which isn't always the case.
And can I ask Caroline, why did you apply to come to Otago so far from home?
Thank you. Well, as we've discussed, I also have 2 children, so it's been a big sacrifice to ask that of them. It's entirely because of Caroline Plummer. The notice, the call for proposals came through email. It was forwarded to me, and as soon as I read it, I knew. I just knew. And hoped and didn't expect. But the languaging of the proposal resonated with me deeply. It was so refreshing. Academia in the United States certainly can get extremely formal. You can't say anything, really. And the call for proposals was something that Caroline had a hand in writing. And it was just very straightforward about the importance of dance in people's lives, how it was beneficial, how it could be healing. I mean, you can't say healing in academia. And it was so refreshingly straightforward that I just knew. And it's been like that the whole way. It's had a resonance on many levels. There's been a lot of synchronicity. Yeah.
It's the most amazing city to come to. Well,
Absolutely. I've learned a lot about Dunedin through dance because I had no experience of Dunedin before. And so I've gotten to know Dunedin by going to dance studios and dance performances and meeting people. And it's been a really great way to learn about a city.
thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Mary. When do you write in Te Reo Māori and when do you write in the English language, and do you translate your work between them?
The Singing Dolphin, my latest picture book, is the first one I've done the translation myself. My writing process is I write in English. English is my first language. I didn't become fluent in the reo until I was 40, despite the fact it was my father's first language. So my process is write in English, begin the illustrations, and then go back and do the Te Reo Māori translation. And that was really interesting because for the first time when I did the Māori translation, I went back and changed some of the English. And that's the first time. And finally at 65, well, I did this last year, 64, feeling confident to have that flexibility to think in both cultures, in both languages, because they do have different perspectives. And then, of course, with the illustrating, it's a third perspective.
Anyone else? Anyone else? No? Good. Well, I think we'll call it a day. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our 5 fellows, Mary, Craig, Chris, Carolyn and Campbell, for their time this afternoon and for sharing how it works with us this afternoon. I'd like to thank the University of Otago and the DPAG, to Linda and to Johnny for looking after us. Oh, he's gone. And I'd also like to acknowledge Chef Rogers and Stuart Young from the English department and Theatre and Music and Theatre Studies Department for their attendance here today. And thank you all for coming. And now I'll hand back to Linda for an advertisement and an invitation for a cup of tea and some cupcakes.
That's right. So just a little note before we finalise, and that is that if you want to see Campbell's show, it's downstairs off the foyer in a very small dark room, and it has "Call Sick" written on the door. And beside the lift are some of the accoutrements that went with the video over a period of time, and I think you'll find it very, if not funny, a bit sad, and very thought-provoking. And the other notice that I wanted to say was that Caroline has organised with quite a few dance groups in the city to perform here in the gallery next Sunday at 2 p.m. And we're going to choose a few different places that the dancers might like to be within the gallery. But you can go and watch each one individually because they're not performing at the same time. So I think that should be a really interesting thing to do. That's next Sunday at 2 p.m. And I'd just like to say, because Nicholas has sort of finalised things, apart from having a cup of tea and some macarons, cupcakes and various other odds and ends, would everybody just like to say thank you so much to everybody for today?